a chain, 3 padlocks, 12 zip ties, 8 wire ties, 18 rocks, 6 layers of plastic and duct tape. Does this look like panic? I submit to you it looks like extreme planning. They want you to believe they're not complicit to their baby's murder. But this is what they chose for a coffin and his burial? This?
That was the moment the prosecutor was in full-blown rage because of what baby Dylan had to go through. But before this, there was a crucial interrogation where Jessica Groves sat at the metal table like none of this mattered, with no sign that a 4-month-old child was missing. And across from her, Daniel Groves. They'd been brought in separately and interrogated separately. Each of them claimed Dylan, their infant son, was with Children's Services. Each insisted he was fine and they stuck to the same story. But when they were left alone together, seated in what they thought was just a holding area, that's when the truth began to leak out. Only they didn't realize the room wasn't silent. It was wired. There was no yelling or screaming, just a low, raw whisper that cut deeper than any outburst ever could. Daniel leaned toward Jessica and he said, "If they find his body and find out where he had a broken arm and shit, we're It wasn't a confession made under pressure. It wasn't said to avoid blame. It was something worse. It was 2 parents speaking freely because they thought no one was listening. But someone was, and they had heard everything. Now, let's go back to how a newborn named Dylan ended up dead, buried in a sealed crate at the bottom of a well, and how his parents almost got away with it. But before we begin, if you find this video interesting, please give it a like at the end and tell me what you think about the case. It really helps the channel, and don't forget to subscribe for more. Thank you. To understand how it ended, you have to see where the trail went cold. March 28th, 2019. That was the last day anyone outside the Groves family laid eyes on baby Dylan alive. That afternoon, Patricia Kraft, a caseworker from Children's Services, made a scheduled visit to the Groves home. Dylan had been placed back with Daniel Groves under strict conditions, and this was one of the follow-ups to ensure he was safe. Kraft reported that Dylan was present. He was in Jessica's arms, dressed, alert, and seemed responsive. Jessica said all the right things. She acted like a mother just trying to rebuild her life, and Daniel stood nearby, calm, cooperative, answering questions like a man who wanted custody to stick. But that visit was the last clear moment of Dylan's life, because after March 28th, everything stopped. No more medical appointments, no responses to follow-up calls, and no one saw Dylan at the house again. So the calls from CPS kept coming, and they kept going unanswered. When caseworkers arrived at the home unannounced, there was no sign of the baby. Jessica always had an excuse. He's sleeping. He's at a relative's. We're not feeling well. The stories didn't line up, but CPS never forced their way in. Then came April 30th. By that point, over a month had passed with zero proof of life, so Dylan Groves, 4 months old, was officially declared missing. Authorities acted quickly. They arrived at the home with a search warrant, hoping to find Dylan safe, maybe hidden, maybe sick, but alive. But Daniel wasn't there. Someone had seen him speeding off moments earlier, riding a 4-wheeler through a backfield, disappearing into the woods behind their trailer. Jessica stayed inside. She didn't seem panicked, and she didn't even mention Dylan. Later, when investigators searched the home, they found a calendar still hanging on the kitchen wall. April 22nd had a note scribbled in Jessica's handwriting. It said, "Worst day ever." But that wasn't the day Dylan disappeared. That was the day her older son, Daniel Jr., had been removed from the home and taken into protective custody. So the day her newborn son was murdered, no entry and no calendar mark. Because whatever had happened to Dylan, Jessica Groves didn't think that day was even worth remembering. But before Dylan ever took his first breath, the system already knew his name. Not because he was wanted, but because he was at risk. January 10, 2019, Jessica Groves walked into Southern Ohio Medical Center in labor. She was nearly 10 centimeters dilated, ready to give birth, and yet she hadn't seen a doctor once during the entire pregnancy. No prenatal care, no screenings, and no vitamins, nothing. She refused to provide a urine sample, so staff had no choice but to insert a catheter to get one. And the results didn't surprise them, but they still stunned them. Jessica tested positive for not trace amounts, not from a past relapse. She was actively using while in labor. Dylan was born premature, just over 5 pounds, and he came into the world already fighting. His body trembled uncontrollably. He gasped between cries. And every time a nurse tried to soothe him, he flinched. The toxicology confirmed it. Dylan had the same drugs in his system. The staff knew immediately what they were dealing with. This wasn't just a drug-affected newborn. This was neonatal abstinence syndrome in its rawest form. But what disturbed them more was Jessica's face. There was no emotion and no concern for the tiny human who had just been ripped into the world, shivering, crying, struggling. Daniel Groves arrived later. He didn't ask about Dylan's vitals. He didn't ask what the doctors planned to do. Rather, he sat beside Jessica, arms crossed, and waited. So the hospital made a decision. They refused to release Dylan to either parent, not to Jessica, who had poisoned him before he was born, and not to Daniel, who stood by as if none of it mattered. Instead, Dylan was placed in foster care, where he could safely begin detox and treatment. He would stay there for the next few weeks, surrounded by medical professionals, monitored constantly. But as he slowly improved, the system began to waver, because despite the drugs, and despite the withdrawal, despite the total lack of prenatal care or remorse, Jessica and Daniel still had rights, and they wanted Dylan back. While Dylan began his fragile detox inside a neonatal unit, the world outside kept turning, and someone stepped forward to give him a real chance. Her name is Andrea Bowling Tackett. She had taken in other infants before, but Dylan was different. When she brought him home from the hospital, she could see it right away. He couldn't sleep without being held. His tiny limbs jerked unpredictably. His cries were high-pitched, not like other babies, but sharp, desperate, painful. Withdrawal had rewired his nervous system. He wasn't even a month old, and already his body had been through hell. But Andrea didn't flinch. She rocked him and fed him. She held him through every tremor and scream. She knew the signs of trauma, and she understood what Dylan needed, not just medically, but emotionally. He twitched. He needed to be held all the time, she later said. But we loved him. We were ready.
I had, from where I had my previous foster son, I had a room that was vacant. My cousin gave me the crib for Dylan. And then I had a rocker recliner upstairs that I brought down so I could rock him. And then a friend of mine from church gave me a Mamaroo, which is it's a device like what they have at the hospital, which is kind of like a high-tech saucer type thing that rocks the babies and soothes them. And so we had one of those brought to the house, and I have a really good support system of friends and family, and it was just like clothes were coming in, and it was almost immediate. I had everything I needed for him.
Seems like there was this mad scramble from your community of friends to...
It was, yes. It was a mad scramble, and then we had a room that was perfect.
And Dylan responded slowly. The flinching softened, the crying eased, and began to smile. He was learning against the odds that the world could be safe, but time was ticking. The state still had to determine whether Dylan's biological parents, Jessica and Daniel, would get another chance. So supervised visits were scheduled, and Andrea brought Dylan to the courthouse. Daniel would attend, quiet, reserved, sometimes affectionate. Jessica was unpredictable. Then one day, Jessica showed up, eyes dilated, unsteady, mumbling. Andrea saw the signs immediately. She had no medical degree, but she didn't need one. Jessica was high, clearly. She alerted Children's Services right away. She warned them and pleaded with them, but nothing happened. No follow-up, no drug test, and no suspension of visitation. Instead, just over 2 weeks later, on January 28th, 2019, Dylan was taken from Andrea and returned to Daniel Groves. The court had allowed it, under one key condition. Jessica was not to live in the home, and the baby would be solely in the care of Daniel, whom they thought was clean. It was a line drawn in ink, but lines don't mean much when no one checks who's crossing them, because Jessica never really left, and now Dylan was back in the same environment he'd barely survived the first time. For a while, on paper, it looked like things were going well. There were 2 documented pediatric visits after Dylan's return to Daniel Groves, one on February 7th and another on February 21st. The reports from both visits painted a stable picture, and Dylan was gaining weight. There were no visible injuries. The notes read, healthy, no concerns. But the key word there was visible, because no one really knew what was happening inside that house, and the people who were supposed to check never did. Weekly home visits, mandated by the court, didn't happen. Caseworkers didn't show up. No one verified that Jessica was staying away. No one looked past the paperwork, so the system assumed everything was fine. Until March 28th, 2019. That was the last time anyone outside the Groves home saw Dylan alive. Caseworker Patricia Kraft visited that day. Jessica was there, despite the court order, and Dylan was in her arms. He looked quiet and still, but nothing set off an alarm strong enough to act. After that visit, everything went silent. No more medical appointments, no response to calls, missed visitations, and Dylan vanished slowly, quietly, and no one noticed. Weeks passed, but then something else started to unravel. Caseworkers attempted a routine check-in with Daniel and realized he no longer worked at Rural King, the job he had listed on all his court documents. He'd either quit or lied. Either way, he wasn't where they thought he was. It was only then, in late April, that questions began to surface. Not just about Dylan, but about Daniel Jr., their teenage son still living in the same home. On April 24th, with no answers and growing suspicion, Children's Services removed Daniel Jr. from the Groves household. The case was no longer just about neglect. Now it was about concealment, possibly something worse. And that same week, the Scioto County Sheriff's Office got involved. They were told that a baby hadn't been seen in nearly a month, and the parents had stopped answering their phones. The system had been blind for too long. Now it was time to kick down the door. So on the morning of June 10th, 2019, law enforcement stopped asking questions and started taking action. A SWAT team was deployed to the Groves rural trailer in Otway, Ohio, with UNs drawn and perimeter locked. They weren't just looking for answers anymore. They were preparing for resistance, and that's exactly what they got. Jessica Groves came out first, screaming, angry, combative, not with concern, not with panic, but rage. She barked about her rights and cursed at officers. But Daniel wasn't there. He had vanished. Inside the trailer, deputies found signs of someone fleeing in a hurry. A back door left swinging, tracks in the tall grass. So they called in a robot to clear the interior, suspecting he might be hiding or armed. But Daniel had already bolted and he was gone. However, it wouldn't last long. Within hours, law enforcement located him nearby and placed him under arrest. By the end of the day, both Jessica and Daniel Groves were sitting in separate interrogation rooms at the Scioto County Sheriff's Office. But instead of answers, detectives were met with a wall of lies.
Evidently, and correct me if I'm saying something wrong because this information was just given to me. Evidently, they said you're a little boy, and what was his name? Dylan? Maybe, is that so right? Dylan? He was born in January, and I guess he was born on drugs. Is that correct? Under the influence of drugs. Happens all the time. I'm not here to judge you, okay? Children's Services said that you were supposed to be taking him and going to some kind of parenting classes. And you haven't went and signed up your WIC? You haven't went and renewed his medical card?
We did get WIC.
Okay.
He did have medical card until he was taken away.
Okay. That's what?
And it was all given to CPS.
Okay. Where is he at now?
CPS has him.
Honey, no, they don't have him.
They have both kids.
Okay, what's your other child's name?
Daniel,
Daniel, what's the other one's name?
Dylan,
Dylan. How old's Daniel, sweetheart?
14.
And Dylan is under a year old, I assume. Okay, Children's Services does not have your child. They said that they were reuniting him back with you, and everybody says they have not seen your child since March.
Jessica claimed both her children were in state custody. She looked the officer in the eye and said, CPS has both kids, they took them, and you can check. It was a full fabrication, and it didn't end there. Daniel lied too, but his body gave him away.
Uncle, how are you?
All right.
What is your, Daniel?
Yeah.
What's going on?
I don't know. Pick me up with a warrant, is that?
Yeah, you do have a warrant. I
What's the
think
warrant for?
I glanced at it. I thought it said receiving stolen property and something. Wasn't nothing major. But here's the deal. I know Adam Giles, one of the other detectives, read your rights when you were out there, so I'm not going to read them to you again. You understand what I say. What's going on with your baby?
CPS has him.
No, they don't, honey.
Yeah, they do.
No, they don't.
Who was the worker that came and got him then?
Nobody came and got him.
He did.
No.
Yes. I'm telling you, he did.
Children's Services took him, then they gave him back to you.
Right.
And then you started missing your appointments and stuff, and you didn't go. You missed a couple home visits, and you were supposed to come up there, and you never came up. Okay. Here's the thing, and I'm gonna keep it real with you. Okay. I've already talked to Jessica. You know Jessica's over in our jail. Did they tell you that?
I didn't know where she was at.
Okay, she's in jail. Okay. Here's the thing is, we need him back. Okay. And as I told you, she kind of broke a little bit of it down for me. Here's the thing is, and I'm gonna keep it real with you. Accidents happen. I get it. I know, didn't he have a medical condition?
No.
Well, I know the doctor, Christ Pediatrics, called and said he had some kind of genetic something, and he was supposed to come for more testing, and you guys didn't show up. And they told me the name, but I can't remember exactly how to pronounce it. And you guys didn't take him to his doctor's appointment. Why didn't you take him back to his doctor's appointment?
They just said it was probably a false positive, is what the doctor told her.
Yeah, but then they called back and told you guys to bring him over there because something came back on a test. I was just reading the notes from the doctor's office.
They told me they was going to call me to schedule, and they never did.
Okay. Jessica said, and like I said, you guys are together, and I get that. You guys have been married for 100 years, it seems like. Because don't you guys have, what, a 14 or 15-year-old?
Mm-hmm.
You guys have been together for a long time. She said you did something with him. With Dylan. Here's the thing is, it's not going to go away. And as I told her, she said you're the one that can take him to where he's at. Things happen. And I'll be the first one to tell you, we all make mistakes in our life. Obviously, I've made mistakes. I've got a daughter who's 28 years old. Got pregnant fresh out of high school. It's hard. I don't know how you're raising two, both of you. Don't have a clue because it's hard. And that's what I told her. I grew up dirt poor, didn't have nothing. So, I can sympathize. I've never had a drug problem, thank goodness. But, I had a brother that struggled with it. Are you guys still on the dope?
Not really.
Because you guys were doing heroin, she said. She's worried about you, but she was pretty honest with me. And she said, you're the one that can take us to him. Here's the thing is, I don't have a magic wand. And that's what I told her. I said, I can't make it. You are in a little bit of trouble. You already know that. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. A lot of people say they'll promise you. That's bull. We're not a judge. We can't promise you. However, I can put a good word in for you. And like I said, accidents do happen, and I get that. But the main thing is you guys have one last chance, and that's why I told her to do right by your son. Do I think?
Now, at this point, Detective Jody Conkle asked Jessica if Daniel was responsible for this, but she said he could never do such a thing.
It's not given back to me. He was given to his dad.
Okay. Do you know what Dad did with him, sweetheart?
CPS took him back.
They're saying they did not.
And when they took Daniel, and they had no right to take Daniel.
Well, I'm going to check into that for you. Did you see CPS take the child, or is that what Daniel told you?
Yes, they were there. They took him.
When was that?
I don't know.
Honey, I'm not trying to upset you. I'm just trying to get to the bottom of this, because this is what's going on right now. Is no one can find the baby. That's what this is over. The baby's missing. And here's the thing, honey, and I'm gonna be straight up with you. If it's something that the dad's done something, whatever, you just need to help yourself at this time. 1, help us find your baby, and 2, help yourself. Okay?
Daniel would never hurt his children, ever.
Honey, I'm not saying he hurt him. I'm just saying, is he hid somewhere? We just need to make sure that he's okay. Okay? I need to be able to confirm that the baby's okay and nothing happened to him, because, yeah, you didn't go to them classes. No, everybody said the last time they seen your baby was
I was
March.
never supposed to go to parenting classes.
Okay, that's what they said. Honey, I don't know. It's all stuff I'm going to check. What did they tell you had to do?
I had to go to Mahajan, which I did, and Mahajan didn't report anything. They didn't turn in nothing here.
Okay. Who did you see up there, honey? Do you remember?
Jessica.
Jessica? Okay. And what else did they tell you to do?
And see Greg.
Who's Greg?
Dunham.
Greg Dunham. Did you go see Greg?
I seen him twice, and I haven't had a vehicle. I haven't had a phone. I don't have any means of communication.
Okay. So let me ask you this. Is Dylan okay?
Yes, as far as I know.
Okay. Where do you think he's at?
I don't know. They didn't.
Okay, Children's Services doesn't have him. I'm going to be straight up with you. Children's Services does not have your child. Last time they seen him, they gave him, you are correct, to your husband. They have not seen that child since then. No one has seen that child since that took place.
They seen him after Daniel got him. Yes, they did.
Yeah, but no one's seen him since March, sweetheart. Didn't you guys get him in February?
I don't even remember.
I think it was February. So no one's seen your baby since March. And our biggest concern is, one, that you guys are okay, but we also...
The detective had to play an emotional card with Daniel, suggesting that maybe what happened was just an accident, all in an effort to get him to open up and reveal the truth about what really happened to the baby.
And I know you're a good dad because you were doing everything right there for a little bit. Don't leave him laying out wherever he's at. He doesn't deserve that, and you don't deserve that. And Jessica even said that. She said that you would do the right thing. That's what she told me.
What's she in jail for?
She's in jail for complicity to kidnapping and interference with custody.
What's she in kidnapping for?
Because right now, the fact that you didn't bring him back to Children's Services when you're supposed to, it makes you both the same thing, interference with custody and kidnapping. Because your child, and like I said, that could change, especially if, he's deceased and something happened. I can't put words in your mouth what happened. I mean, I already know. And like I said, and just like I told her, he don't deserve to be laying out there. And dear God, he looks just like you now that I see you. Things happen. But this is your chance to make right by it. This little baby don't deserve that. And you know that. We can get through anything. And like I said, yeah, you're in a little bit of trouble. But I tell you, everybody's going to look up to you and have respect that you did the right thing. You know what? It takes a man. And that's like I told Jessica the same thing. It takes a real person, a man, to stand up and say, yeah, I made a mistake. Let's make right by it. I have more respect than for people. I've had people that's came in here, killed 2 or 3 people, adults, and told me the truth and explained it to me. And I have more respect for them than a coward that chooses not to. You know what I'm saying?
Nobody killed him.
Well, what happened, honey?
He just died.
What did he die of? Tell me how this happened. Tell me.
He just found him. He was gone.
Okay. Purple?
Yeah.
Okay. Where'd you put him, sweetheart? Let's get him where...
At this point, the detective had finally gotten something. A breakthrough. Daniel admitted it. Dylan was dead, but that was only part of the truth, because if he was dead, then where was he now? Where had they taken his body? And how were investigators supposed to bring him back? The answers were still buried, and getting them out of Jessica and Daniel wouldn't be easy.
As you can see, I was telling you the truth. They did have him. And I just talked to him, and he told me that Dylan is dead, and that you guys put him in something and took him up the road off to the right and put him somewhere. He said that you would probably be able to tell us better so we can get him so he's not laying outside, honey. Don't leave your baby laying out there another night. What happened, sweetheart?
I done told you what I know.
Okay, you didn't tell me the truth. You told me something from Children's Services. He's already told me the truth. Your husband's already told me. The lying's got to stop now. If you want me on your side, trying to help sort this mess out, you got to be honest. Because obviously your husband just was.
Now they had to turn to Daniel again since Jessica wasn't breaking.
It to happen.
Did he die out there at your trailer? Okay. Who all was there? Just you two? Okay. How long ago was that, sweetheart? How long after you got him back? Okay. Can you show me where he's at? What is it, sweetheart?
What do you mean show you?
We want to get his remains back. What did you guys do with him? What is it? Honey, I'm going to here in just a minute. You want something to drink or something while you wait? Is he out there by your house?
No, not by my house.
What's he close to, honey?
It's close to our house.
Tell me where he's at while they're out there, and I'll have them get him while they're out there.
I can't explain it.
But can you show me?
Let me show you. Let me show you.
Did you bury him?
Not really.
What is he in?
Let me talk to my wife.
Let me see if they're done with count. Give me just a second.
Daniel eventually told them he'd take them to where the baby was buried. So they followed him. They drove out, hoping for closure, hoping it would finally end. But when they got there, it was a lie. He had led them to the wrong place.
Out of county drug task force, we took Daniel out there to where he told me that Dylan's body would be, and we searched for hours. The area we were in, it was kind of up and down hilly area. There's a creek that ran through. We were everywhere searching there, multiple people. We searched there and around the residence.
When you went out there, did you have information about what type of items you might be looking for?
Yes, he had told me that the baby was in some type of container. He couldn't remember what type of container. Told me that's where he put it, kind of, what the baby might be wearing, because, there should be stuff there. Even I've had other cases where, a body's been left out. Even if animals would, eat on a body or drag stuff off, you always find something.
So the interrogations didn't stop. Investigators had no choice but to hold them longer because somewhere out there, Dylan was still missing, and neither parent was ready to tell the full truth. But then, Daniel made a quiet request. He said he needed to talk to Jessica, and that's when the tide began to turn. Because what happened in that room, once they were alone, would bring investigators closer than ever to the truth.
You come on in. That the reason that we're doing this is because you've cooperated and done everything you're supposed to. She can have drinks. Just no touching, kissing, making out, because I'm doing this as a favor, okay?
Thank you.
She can have some of your drinks or whatever,
No.
but just don't, no making out, kissing, hugging, okay? Does that seem fair enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm so fucking worried about me. I've been on our ass for days to see you. But I've been riding him like a mother. And I've been pissed. I got pissed at fucking Jade. I told her because she told me last 2 days I was going to get to see you. And I did.
I asked and they told me there was absolutely no way that I could see you at all. That men and women were not allowed to see each other, period.
Well, Jamie told me, Jade promised me the first fucking day after night they brought me in here. I was going to get to see you. And she told me, I could see you in the morning. Well, and then in the morning, then they took me out to the house and had me out there all day. Then we got back, she was supposed to, you know.
What'd they have you out to the house for?
Whatever.
I've been so worried about the dogs. I've tried to call Linda. I couldn't even get a spoon until today.
No, they ain't even stuck foot. They still got me. They've been holding me up and holding the whole time. I ain't even been up back on the range. I've been up in a holding cell range where the lights are on all the time. That's another thing I want to talk to Jody about now, because they supposed to put me back there last night and they wouldn't do it.
What are they charging you with?
Kidnapping, abduction, and like I don't know, another misdemeanor.
You had court this morning?
Video court.
I had video court yesterday morning. My bond's $100,000.
Kidnapping. Then what? What else do you got?
Kidnapping, abduction, and
Same three things I got.
and something fooling with custody,
Yeah.
something misdemeanor 4, felony 4, and a felony 1.
Jessica complained about the way she was being treated. Daniel kept circling back to the dog, worried about who would feed it. There was no mention of Dylan, just two people trying to protect themselves from consequences they already knew were coming. And that silence about the baby said everything. But it was at this time they eventually let out the whole truth. This was the moment the detective was waiting for.
They told me that you said he was dead. They told me you were going to use me. They told me that you said he was dead. Wow. They told me that he was dead. I told him as far as I knew, see, yes, get back into me. They told me that he was dead. They live better than I'm lying. So I told them, I said, well, I have the right to remain silent. They told me that you told me he was dead. They told me you don't think that. That you don't do everything. They told you guys.
What they didn't realize was that the room never went silent. No matter how low they whispered, the amplifiers picked up everything. Every murmur, every word, every crack in their story. The detectives were listening, and in that quiet exchange, beneath their breath, Daniel said just enough to change everything. But when the door opened and the detective stepped back in, it was as if none of it had happened. Daniel sat back, straight-faced, and denied what was already obvious.
You're welcome, but you know what? You lied to me.
What?
Took us to the wrong place where the body was. Why would you lie? Why would you want to hide? You know what?
That's a lie.
Okay, here, I'm just gonna be straight up with you. You're just making things way worse for yourself, because you know what you're gonna pull around, you know what they're gonna indict you for? Involuntary manslaughter, that's what's gonna happen.
I think you're in the wrong place.
Yeah, you did.
So when they pressed further, when they asked where Dylan was, Daniel finally stopped lying. He gave directions, but it wasn't to a cemetery or to a hidden crawl space. It was to a grassy field behind an old rural home where a natural spring had long since been forgotten and overgrown. They brought out the firefighters, but the water was deeper than expected and dirt had collapsed in from the sides, so they couldn't just pump it out. They had to fish for what was at the bottom, using a strap with a hook, and what they pulled from that murky darkness would silence an entire room. It wasn't just a body, it was a container, and it was 80 pounds heavy, not from Dylan's weight, but from what they'd used to hold him down. First, they found 2 milk crates fitted tightly together, then came the chain, 3 padlocks, 12 zip ties, 8 wire ties, 18 rocks, packed for weight, an iron pipe flange screwed into the side. Wrapped around all of it, 7 full layers of plastic and duct tape. They didn't throw him in, they built this. Inside the layers, tucked between trash bags and knots, was Dylan Groves, still in his onesie, still wearing his socks and diaper, as if it was bedtime. But what they had done to bury him wasn't panic. It wasn't a last-minute cover-up. It was deliberate. It was engineered. It was the work of people who didn't want Dylan found, but they found him anyway. And what they learned next about the injuries he suffered before that burial would define the rest of the trial.
Out of county drug task force, we took Daniel out there to where he told me that Dylan's body would be, and we searched for hours. The area we were in, it was kind of up and down hilly area. There was a creek that ran through. We were everywhere searching there, multiple people. We searched there and around the residence.
When you went out there, did you have information about what type of items you might be looking for?
Yes, he had told me that the baby was in some type of container. He couldn't remember what type of container. Told me that's where he put it, kind of, what the baby might be wearing, because, there should be stuff there. Even I've had other cases where, a body's been left out. Even if animals would, eat on a body or drag stuff off, you always find something. We found nothing.
The recovery gave them a body, but what came next revealed the real horror. Dr. Susan Brown, the forensic pathologist, began the examination. She didn't just find one injury. She found layers of violence separated by time, each telling a different story. On the right side of Dylan's skull, a fracture, partially healed, then another fracture on the left, this one fresh, no sign of healing. His left arm had been broken in 3 places. His left leg, the tibia snapped. Ribs 6 and 7 showed signs of calcification, meaning they had been fractured earlier and had started healing. Bruises covered his tiny chest, his scalp, and both of his eyes, but that wasn't all. His liver tested positive for methamphetamine and amphetamines. And that ruled out the defense's argument that it came from birth. These drugs weren't lingering from delivery. They had entered Dylan's system after he was taken home, possibly through breast milk, possibly directly, but either way, someone had poisoned him. Then came the detail that broke the room. The fluid around Dylan's brain was pink, which meant only one thing: internal bleeding. His brain had been hemorrhaging. The doctor's conclusion was chilling. This wasn't a single fatal strike. Dylan had survived multiple attacks, and whoever did it had time to stop, but didn't.
Did you, and you only, cause the death of your son, Dylan Groves?
Yes.
Did Daniel Groves participate in the killing of Dylan?
No.
Was Daniel Groves aware of any of the injuries that you caused Dylan that may have led to his death?
No.
Did you hide all injuries that you caused Dylan from your husband?
Yes.
Then came the most haunting testimony of all from Daniel Jr., their older son. He told the court he had seen bruises on Dylan's head and that his baby brother had been hurt, and no one protected him. Daniel Groves Sr. followed. He took the stand with a blank look and a limp defense. He said the abuse felt like a dream, as if what happened wasn't real, or maybe he didn't want it to be. But under pressure, he admitted what mattered most. He saw Jessica hit Dylan at least 4 times, and each time, he did nothing.
I remember telling Detective Conkle that you saw your wife hit the baby a couple times.
I said that I had what I thought were dreams of it, but I was unsure if they were true or not. I was very sleep deprived. Did you not say you saw your wife you saw your wife strike the baby? I said I did, but I thought it was dreams.
Daniel's defense team tried to draw a line. They claimed he hadn't killed Dylan and that he was only guilty of helping Jessica cover it up, that he was merely the one who disposed of the body. But to the courtroom, and to anyone listening, it didn't matter, because he knew, he watched, and he said nothing. That silence made him just as guilty. Meanwhile, Jessica shifted into damage control. She tried to frame herself as a broken mother, claimed she was overwhelmed, claimed she couldn't remember. But the jury wasn't buying it. Neither was the prosecution. They cross-examined her relentlessly. They broke down every lie and every excuse and every moment she failed to protect the child she gave birth to. And no matter how hard she tried to sell a sob story, the facts always won.
How did you cause these injuries?
It was an accident.
Not your excuse for what happened. How did you cause these injuries? How did you cause those rib fractures? by dropping him? How did you cause that first 2-inch skull fracture?
I don't remember.
How did you cause that 1-inch skull fracture?
It had to be from dropping him.
Jessica wasn't prepared for the pressure. The prosecutor's questions kept coming, direct, simple, and impossible to dodge. But instead of answering, Jessica lashed out. She claimed the prosecutor was trying to destroy her family, as if this was someone else's fault, as if the courtroom had forgotten who left Dylan buried at the bottom of a well. The judge called for a short recess, and when the courtroom reconvened, the atmosphere had shifted. The jury, quiet until now, had a message. She was reminded that this wasn't a stage for excuses or outbursts. It was a courtroom, and if she wanted to be heard, then she needed to answer the questions she was asked. No more theatrics and no more blame, just the truth or whatever was left of it. Jessica kept insisting she didn't remember, and she said she dropped the baby, but couldn't say when. She said Dylan was hurt, but didn't know how. Could she have been that high? So far gone that her memory just shut off? Maybe, but even that didn't excuse what happened next, and the prosecutor wasn't about to let it slide.
You heard that 15-year-old little boy describe that baby as having bruising all around where his hair would be expected. How would he describe that picture from the autopsy if that wasn't the way that baby looked? But defendant Daniel Groves didn't know. And Daniel Jr. said it was a matter of time after he sees this that the baby disappeared. He didn't know. He couldn't have called right then for emergency medical assistance to give baby Dylan a chance to survive. I submit to you that's the least he could have done. You're expected to believe that these parents, who everyone from the hospital testified, never asked questions about that baby when he was removed and couldn't breathe, stayed glued to each other, and then packaged up their baby and threw him in a 30-foot well, were suddenly so caring that they wanted to hold baby Dylan every time Patricia Kraft was there.
So, evidently, Daniel had hidden Dylan's body in the well to protect Jessica, to protect her from being arrested. What a love story, but not the kind that ends in flowers or forgiveness. This was the kind that wrapped a child in duct tape, locked him in crates, and sank him beneath cold water, all to shield the woman who helped put him there. Daniel called it protection, but the jury called it what it truly was, complicity, because covering up a crime doesn't make you less guilty.
Daniel Groves panicked and dumped baby Dylan in a 30-foot well. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, does this look like panic to you? Does it? A chain, 3 padlocks, 12 zip ties, 8 wire ties, 18 rocks, 6 layers of plastic and duct tape. Does this look like panic?
So, January 10th, 2020, it should have been Dylan's first birthday, a day for cake, candles, maybe even his first unsteady steps. But instead, his name was read out in a courtroom, and his parents, the very people who were supposed to protect him, stood to hear their fate. The courtroom was silent as the verdict came down. Jessica Groves, guilty on all 11 counts, including aggravated murder, abuse of a corpse, tampering with evidence, and endangering children. The judge didn't hold back. You showed no remorse. You showed no mercy to your child. Her sentence? Life without parole plus 32 years. Then came Daniel. He stood pale, eyes low. The man who stayed silent. The man who buried his son to protect the woman who helped kill him was guilty on 10 counts. And he was sentenced 47 years to life. Not quite life without parole, but close. Close enough that he won't likely breathe free air again. So, on the day Dylan would have turned one, his name became a headline. His life was reduced to a timeline of pain, silence, and betrayal. But finally, the silence ended, and someone, the court, the jury, the state, finally spoke for Dylan. So, what do you think about this case? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. We read everyone. And if you found this story important, disturbing, or worth sharing, hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe for more real stories that matter, and check out the next video on our channel.